all across America and around the world. This is Veterans Radio. This is Veterans Radio.
Welcome to Veterans Radio. I am Jim Fausone. I'm the officer of the deck today. We've got some great programs for you. We always want to remind you you can find more about Veterans Radio at its Facebook site or at the web, veteransradio.org, where we're on the web 24/7. You can find a lot of our podcasts there as well. We post new ones every Tuesday, so you can get a new story, a new interview, something you didn't know before by going to veteransradio.org. And before we get started, we want to thank our sponsors. First up, we want to thank National Veteran Business Development Council, nvbdc.org. It was established to certify both service-disabled and veteran-owned businesses. You'll find out how they can help your business by going to nvbdc.org. We want to thank Legal Help for Veterans. Legal Help for Veterans fights for veterans' disability rights all across the nation. You can reach them at 800-693-4800 or on the web at legalhelpforveterans.com. And finally, PuroClean. PuroClean is the paramedics of property damage. It provides water damage remediation, flood water removal, fire and smoke damage remediation, mold removal, biohazard cleanup. It also has a focus on veteran franchisees. You can learn more about them by going to puroclean.com. We want to welcome to Veterans Radio Jim Warner. He is a retired Air Force colonel. We're going to talk to him about his activities with the Air Force Missileers Association. Jim, welcome to Veterans Radio.
Thanks for having me.
Well, you had a long and distinguished career, starting out in the Air Force and ROTC at Holy Cross College. Little did you know it would be a career, and then a civilian career after that, all focused on missiles. What did you think you were getting into when you joined the Air Force ROTC at Holy Cross College?
Interesting question. I joined, so we're talking the early 1970s, in the middle of the Vietnam War. College campuses were closing down due to protests. It was a crazy time. And I met a guy in one of my classes, and he basically dared me to join ROTC. He said, "You don't have the what's to walk around in a uniform on this campus." And I said, "Oh, really?" And so I went down and talked to the ROTC guys, and the next week I was walking around in a uniform. It was just once a week, a couple hours a day, but enough in the middle of the protest that you got a little bit of attention. But I found that the people there were good, solid Americans, and I liked being around them. So I tried it out for the first couple of years. And then at your junior year, you have to commit to going in. And so all of a sudden, I've committed. My dad and his brothers owned a construction company, and always said, if you want to come work for us, you got to go work someplace else first. So I said, hey, 4 years in the Air Force is not a bad place to get some experience and then go back into family business. Little I know that I'd never go back.
Yeah. You ended up initially on a Minuteman II missile combat crew in Ellsworth Air Force Base in beautiful South Dakota, but really went all over the world, I think, over the next couple of decades of your career. Along the way, you would have had opportunities to go back to the family business, but this obviously captivated you.
Yeah, I was at the end of my 4 years, I was sitting in South Dakota, and my boss called me into his office and said, hey, you've been requested by name to go to California and be part of the schoolhouse where they teach Missileers. And I called my dad up and I said, because I was probably 4 months away from separating at the time. And I called my dad up and, told him what's going on. He said, hey, the job will always be here. Pursue your dreams, see what happens. And that second assignment was just the ceiling of the fate, so to speak. And I just really enjoyed teaching, and I really enjoyed, dealing with the future missileers. And I said, I'm not leaving as long as the Air Force will have me. And like you said, that ended up being 27 years before I finally said that was enough. Most of our assignments were in the U.S., South Dakota, Wyoming, California, Colorado, the Pentagon. We had one assignment in Belgium in the ground launch cruise missile, and that was a fun year in Belgium. But all the rest were stateside.
Well, let's start with, before we turn to the Association of Air Force Missileers, explain to people, because I think this is the first time on Veterans Radio in 20 years we've had somebody on who can talk about what is a missileer.
That's a good question. So a missileer, so let's start with the basics. Today, we have 400 intercontinental ballistic missiles stationed underground in the central part, upper part of the central part of the United States, meaning Montana, North Dakota, Wyoming, Nebraska, and Colorado. 400 Minuteman missiles, Minuteman III missiles. We started with Minuteman I during the Cuban Missile Crisis and then upgraded the system to they are today. They're in silos, hardened silos underground, and they're solid fuel missiles that are designed to go over the polar ice cap and hit targets on the other side of the world. Separate from those, for each 10 missiles, there's one launch control center, which is about 60 feet below ground, and every day, 7 days a week, 24 hours a day, there are two crew members, missileers, that are sitting in that capsule awaiting direction from the President of the United States to launch those missiles.
And this is all defensive, hope we never have to use them kind of thing, right?
Yeah, the whole purpose is deterrence. The Russians were the first ones to launch into space, the first ones to put up a satellite, and then, of course, we got into the Cold War, the Cuban Missile Crisis, and that was the real. The late 1950s was the beginning of Atlas and Titan missiles, which were liquid missiles and didn't have as much range. But then Minuteman came in during the Cuban Missile Crisis, and we've had ICBMs on alert ever since. They're not, they're offensive weapons in the fact that, it is a weapon. It's not defenses in that it can't stop something coming in. But its purpose is to convince the enemy not to launch a nuclear weapon at us, because if you launch at us, we have the capability to destroy you. And what we want is the Russian president or the Chinese premier to wake up every morning and go, I can't afford to launch a weapon at the United States because the impact on us would be horrific. And so that's the whole purpose.
Yeah, we'll do this in a bit of a reverse order because this is so interesting. I always said we'd wait till the end, but part of this is the world crazies have expanded beyond China and Russia. We've got Korea, we've got Iran. As you look at the present time and look into the future, are missileers going to continue to be part of the U.S. military arsenal?
Oh yeah, we have the Air Force is developing a replacement system for Minuteman, which will probably serve 70 plus years from its inception in 1961 before it's replaced. The Navy has the Ohio class submarines, which are also ballistic in nature. Ballistic means the flight path, how it gets from one point to another. A cruise missile, a gun, all that is a direct shot, but a ground launch missile has got to go over in an apogee over the Earth and back down to its target. It's we still have the Navy submarines and the Air Force ICBMs on alert every day, and they're going to be around for a long time to come. As long as our enemies have that capability to strike us, then I believe we need that capability to convince them not to strike.
Yeah, as you might imagine, I think our audience listening in goes, I don't have a lot of exposure to this other than what I see out of Hollywood or read in a novel, and those things don't necessarily match up with truth, do they?
Well, and it's true. I mean, we're really the silent sentinels in that many people, unless you live in North Dakota and you see the fenced-in silos or the guys driving out to alert every day, I'd say 90% of our country has no concept of what these guys do every day. And when I talk Missileers, it's not just the operators that sit in the capsule, but it's the maintenance guys that keep it all running, the security defenders that protect the sites, the communicators that keep our lines of communication open to the president, all the contractors that support it. They're all Missileers. They all support the ICBM mission.
Well, let's turn to that. Let's turn to the Association of Air Force Missileers. Talk to us about what the association purpose is and kind of what it does today.
Well, we have a couple main missions. The first is to do exactly what we're doing today, and that is to inform the public on the role of ICBMs, because people just don't know what they do. The second is to retain the heritage of the system. There aren't that many. I mean, over the last 60 plus years, there's probably less than 70,000 people who have served as a missileer, and maybe 10% of those aren't around anymore. And so we retain the heritage of and share the heritage of what these guys have done. To that end, for example, this year we're kicking off our first Air Force Missileers Hall of Fame, where we've identified 21 missileers who contributed to the early fielding of our missile systems in the 50s and 60s that led to what we have today. And we'll recognize them at our national meeting in Buellton, California, outside of Vandenberg Space Force Base, on the 26th of October.
Well, I think these Hall of Fames are so important to recognize the men and women, particularly of a silent service that doesn't get a lot of recognition. But I've seen the list of the inaugural class in front of me. I mean, it ranges from generals to sergeants and master sergeants and chief master sergeants. I mean, you really got a good swath of missileers here, and I suspect that was part of the goal.
Oh, definitely. We want to recognize, not just the senior guys who led us there, but the people who were at boots on the ground that made a difference and made it all happen. We're very fortunate in the Museum of the Air Force in Dayton is going to add to their missile display with a presentation of our Hall of Fame. That'll be our digital version. We won't have a separate facility. We're not big enough to be the Baseball Hall of Fame, but we will have recognition at the Air Force Museum.
One of the things I wanted to talk about, because it's not just sort of looking back and reunions and the good old days. AAFM is doing work on health issues that I thought was pretty interesting. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, it's very interesting that within the last year, we've had some of our missileers identify a serious problem with cancer that has come up with those who have served in the underground systems. It has led to the Air Force actually conducting the Air Force School of Aerospace Medicine out of Dayton is actually conducting a formal study into the causes for these cancers and working to identify the causes, clean up anything they can, and make sure that those who are serving today are safe to serve in the future. And then to work with the VA and the Air Force to ensure that we get medical care for all these people. Colonel Danny Seebeck, who was a missileer at Malmstrom and has since moved over to the Space Force, was putting together a presentation for his leadership when it actually got leaked to the press early, and it caused a lot of attention. But as sad as it was that got leaked, it turned out to be everybody's benefit because it got a lot of interest, and the Air Force is really behind ensuring that we make sure that we take care of our missileers.
And this recognized some statistical disparity or disproportionateness in non-Hodgkin lymphoma, as well as maybe some other diseases. And I think it's really important. Anybody who's been in the service, all veterans, we've all been exposed to more toxic stuff than we ever knew, because it was just part of what you did. Cleaning parts, cleaning guns, cleaning tanks, working on missile systems, adding fuel, blowing fuel off, whatever it might be. There's just a lot of toxic stuff there. So this is not really that surprising to me, but it's surprising that maybe it's taken this long to folks say, hey, we ought to look at this subgroup and see if something's going on.
Yeah, I think that's the important thing is we knew there were people that were having health issues, but we never could pinpoint it. And because it was isolated here and there, and it tended to show up after someone retired from the Air Force or left the service when they did a shorter term, and so it didn't show up within the Air Force system because of the period of time. But when Colonel Seebeck started getting a group together, and he has a site called the Torchlight Initiative, which we're supporting, the number that have come in to self-identify, and including their medical records, was sufficient enough to get the Air Force's attention. You're talking about, it's one thing, and I agree with what you're saying about working with chemicals in an open air environment, refueling aircraft and all that type of stuff, but the operators and maintainers are working in underground sealed environments where air is recirculated and purified, but it's still, it's like going down in your basement and closing all the windows and doors and putting limited fresh air in there, to keep the air circulating and to cool the equipment. We're talking 1960s electronics in many cases, and the potential hazards that those electronics put off, and then the electric panels were just full of PCBs. So you put all that into an environment, you close the door, and you seal the guys inside, and it turns out it was a pretty dangerous work environment. I'm surprised we didn't have a lot more people with non-Hodgkin's lymphoma and other cancers. The numbers are starting to grow, and we're trying to get the word out.
Yeah, and I want to put a little spotlight on that, which is torchlightinitiative.org. There's a registry there. You can get a lot of information. If you're in this class of veterans, you ought to check that out. Again, this is one of the reasons being a member of the Air Force Association of the Air Force Missileers is important, because you're going to get this kind of information. As I say, it's not just reunions. It's not just interesting getting together with guys and telling stories. These health issues are really important, as are the histories that go along with the Missileers. And one of the things I think you've just done as the executive director of the association is put out a book on sort of the history of Missileers. You want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, thanks. We have a new book coming out the end of this month. It's a coffee table book, 324 pages of color pictures and stories. It starts by telling the history of Minuteman and how it got developed. There's a whole chapter on what it's like to be an operator, a maintainer, a security defender with these systems. And then there's a chapter for each of the Minuteman bases, of the bases that had Minuteman missiles, some that have been retired and some that are still active. A lot of the so imagine yourself 60 feet below ground, a lot of blank concrete walls. In the late 80s, there was an effort to paint the walls with history. Our bombers in World War II were known for their nose art, and so we actually had blast door art. But most of it is hidden below ground where the average citizen can't see it.
Exactly. Everybody knows about nose art or painting of the leather jackets. We've done programs on flight jackets. I never knew about blast door art until I got into reading some of your newsletters. Tell us about sort of what would we see in blast door art.
I'll tell you that one of the best ones is, and you can see it in person if you go to the Minuteman Missile National Historic Site in South Dakota, right outside the Badlands. It's a national park, and you can actually go below ground and tour the capsule. Its designation is Delta 01. And on the blast door is a Domino's pizza box. And on the top and the bottom of the box, it says, delivering 30 minutes or the next one's free. Now, many of us remember the old Domino's commercial that was their tagline. Well, the funny thing was that the artist, Tony Gatlin, when he was on alert, he's talking to his crew commander, he called upstairs to the facility manager and said, "Hey, you got any red, white, and blue paint?" And he said, "Sure." And he said, "Okay, send it down." They put it on the elevator and sent it down to him. They thought they were going to paint the American flag on the outside of the blast door. And when they got the colors, they opened it, and the blue just wasn't right. And his crew commander joked to him, "It looks more like dominoes than the American flag." And Tony said, "I got it."
Inspiration.
And inspiration happened, and he painted the dominoes. And you can see that, and there's another good artwork just outside on the wall near it at that site in Delta 1. But all the others there's one that's an igloo with penguins coming out of the igloo. There's one it's Hotel 01. I think it's in Minot, North Dakota. And you hear me using the phonetic alphabet. So each of our sites are lettered A through O, Alpha through Oscar. So when I say Alpha 01 or Oscar 01, that's the Launch Control Center, and then there's 10 missiles assigned to it. But there's one in North Dakota where they actually painted a Star Wars battle scene inside the elevator shaft. So as you ride down the elevator, you can see the battleships and the Jedi fighters going against the other fighters, and there's a whole battle scene 60 feet long, about 12 feet wide, top to bottom. And some of the guys there painted that entire scene. We've got another one that says no vacancy. If you remember back in the old days, free HBO in some of the hotels or motels that used to stop in.
Right,
so a lot of that type of humor is what you would see.
Well,
and all of it's captured in the book.
And the book is titled "The Silent Centennials: Minutemen Artwork Revealed."
Yeah, Sentinels.
That's right. Yeah.
Sentinels, yeah.
And where can one get that book if they're interested?
If you go to afmissileers.org, there's a link on our front page, and you can get it there.
Well, we really do appreciate the time you've given us today, Jim Warner. You've had a long career in this space. Obviously, as the executive director of the association, you know from what you're talking, and I think all of us have to remember a little bit that there's a past here, but there's a future also. And if people are interested in joining the organization because they didn't know it was there and they qualify, how do they do that?
Same thing, afmissileers.org. There's a button that says "Join Here."
Well, we certainly appreciate the time that you've given us today, Colonel, and thanks for all the work that you're doing.
Yeah, I just want to say thanks to all the guys that are out there and the men and women that are pulling an alert today. protecting our nation 24/7. They're the quiet ones, the silent ones that don't get recognized. We see our fighter pilots and our soldiers and all that every day, but these guys are protecting us, and they deserve some recognition. So I appreciate you putting the spotlight on them and this association.
You got it. Amen. Thanks, Jim.
All right. Take care.
And I want to thank everybody for listening to Veterans Radio today. I am Jim Fausone. It's been a pleasure to be your host. I'm a veterans disability lawyer at Legal Help for Veterans, and you can reach us at 800-693-4800 or legalhelpforveterans.com on the web. You can follow Veterans Radio on Facebook and listen to its podcasts and internet radio shows
by visiting us at veteransradio.org. That's veteransradio.org.
And until next time, you are dismissed.
If you have a VA claim denied by the Board of Veterans' Appeals, contact Legal Help for Veterans at 1-800-693-4800. They're experts in handling cases before the U.S. Court of Appeals for Veterans Claims. Their number again, 1-800-693-4800.
We again want to thank our national sponsors, the National Veterans Business Development Council, NVBDC.org, VA Ann Arbor Health Care System, the Vietnam Veterans of America Charles S. Kettles Chapter, Ann Arbor, Michigan, VFW Graf O'Hara Post 423 in Ann Arbor, and the American Legion Press Corn Post 46, also in Ann Arbor. We appreciate all your support. You can go to veteransradio.net, click on the sponsor level, and continue to support keeping Veterans Radio on the air. And until next time, you are dismissed.